"Folks," he said. "What a charming thing to say. Folks. I know you asked me to bring wine, but I forgot to ask what we're having, so I didn't know whether to bring white or red." Natasha looked stricken at the thought of no wine. "So you didn't bring any?" Adam walked over and put a mock comforting hand on her shoulder, then electrically on mine. "Don't worry, my angels," he said in a Prince Charming voice. "I have a fake ID. I will run into a nearby liquor store and purchase wine for everyone. Just tell me of the entree." Gabriel turned from a skillet. "Snapper," he said shortly, and turned back. "You certainly are," Natasha said. Kate stepped forward with a plate of chopped carrots, appeasing all with appetizers. "So, Adam, a couple bottles of wine." "Sounds good. Can I kidnap one of you who knows about wine? If I go alone, I'm bound to come back with lighter fluid." "Well," Kate said, extending an arm out, "I noticed she had her nails done for tonight. Natasha needs to bake the brie, and Gabriel needs to cook, and the hostess certainly can't leave. So would you, Flannery?" "Would I? Would I?" I said, and everybody laughed except Adam. It was a favorite joke of the Basic 8. God forgive me, but it's easier to write that nickname than list us all individually. It was like this. A man loses his job, goes to a bar and gets drunk, and gets into a car accident while driving home. When he gets to the hospital, he is told that his eye needs to be replaced with a prosthetic. His recent unemployment status fixed firmly in his mind, he prices several models. An amazingly lifelike and amazingly costly porcelain model, a reasonably lifelike and reasonably costly glass orb, and finally the bottom of the line, which he chooses. It's made of wood. He wakes up from surgery, looks in the mirror, and embarks on the life of a hermit for the next 15 years. Heedless of the pleas of his friends, he refuses to socialize or even leave the house. Finally, a friend comes to see him, gets him tipsy, and drags him to a discotheque. Our hero sits in a corner, hoping the dim ambiance is hiding what looks like an ugly mahogany periscope dangling from his face. Then, across a crowded room, the camera swooping between extras, he spots a beautiful woman sitting quietly alone, who stuns him from her feet to the camera sliding up her body. Glabrous head! A bald woman! Someone who will understand his pain, someone undoubtedly alone because she too feels incapacitated by a medically induced deficiency on the head. Breathlessly he rushes to her and shyly asks, "Would you care to dance?" Her eyes light up. "Would I?" she repeats. "Would I?" He turns and stalks away, but not before shouting, "Baldy! Baldy!" Nothing made me happier than hearing Adam's laughter bounce off Kate's hill and up into the crisp night sky. "That's wonderful," he said. "Wonderful. So deliciously evil." It was like I was already drunk by the time we arrived at the liquor store. Rows and rows of perfect green bottles shimmered around me like some perfect Egyptian reeds. From the corner of my eye, the word gin looked like the word begin. Even the poses of cigarette poster models didn't seem frozen but poised. Everyone was holding their breath. Breaths? Who cares? And for the first time, I felt like they wouldn't be disappointed. It was like watching a movie and the two famous people first meet, and you sit in the dark grinning because you know how it ends. They're going to fall in love. We walked back, each with a bottle, and in the light of the street lamps, our shadows looked almost identical. In the movies, we would have kissed, but this being paper and not celluloid, we just talked. We discussed being back at school, how neither of us has done any work on college applications, and whether Flora Habstat would really quote the Guinness Book of World Records. When we got back, the season had truly begun. Darling mud on the stereo, loud music during cooking, quiet during dinner, immutable, and all the guests, V and Jennifer Rose Milton, with a slightly geeky-looking Flora Habstat in tow, were tied for most gorgeous, both in black silk pants, to their embarrassment. Douglas, of course, was in linen, and wincing at "On and On and On," was already flipping through records looking for dinner music. It's always his job, that and bringing flowers. Douglas is crazy about flowers. Natasha, who was gone out with him too, said that it felt like he was constantly giving her vaginas, but I felt nothing indecent. I just felt a little overwhelmed by all the xylem and phloem. But Douglas must have been pulling out all financial stops for Lily or something, because there was just a simple vase of daisies on the table. V begged Kate to let her polish something. V has some strange urges from being raised so rich, and one of them is that she needs to have things polished before she can eat off of them. Kate scraped up some silver polish for her, and Vi spent the next 15 minutes polishing some serving forks, which were probably made of stainless steel, but it made her happy. By the time we all sat down at the table, the serving forks could have lit the room without the candles. Next to all the other tableware, they looked like great shining daggers, fresh and ready to claim the life of someone close to us and throw the rest of us into turmoil and heartbreak. Not that Adam was killed with daggers, but it seemed like a good time to foreshadow. Before we ate came the toasts. Kate, at the head of the table where she belonged, and where she will always belong, clinked her glass. "Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen, to the first dinner party of the season." "The season?" Flora Habstadt said. "You guys really have a season? Like football?" Vi looked at Flora in what is described in books as archly. "Not at all," she said huffily, "like football." "It's just an expression. Kate means the first of the school year," Jennifer Rose Milton explained hurriedly. Kate sailed on like a queen. "I think we should all go around the table, each of us presenting a toast. I will go first." She cleared her throat and looked down as if collecting her thoughts, though I suspected she wrote the speech this afternoon. She raised her glass by the stem, as Vi had instructed us to do 2 years ago at our first dinner party. I cringe when I think it was just spaghetti with marinara and garlic bread. We all followed suit, and as my glass cooled my fingertips, I felt connected to a long line of literary circles. Oscar Wilde and Dorothy Parker, and what's-her-name, Virginia Woolf, Byron and his friends, even Shakespeare and company. I was acting in a tradition. "To all my guests, both frequent and infrequent," Kate said, bowing regally to Flora Habstadt and Adam, "may we generally be happy, generally be witty, generally be honest, but above all, always be interesting." We clinked and drank. Gabriel, the next in clockwise order, was looking at Kate oddly. "And may we always be friends," he said. "That's my toast. Better friends than interesting." "Please," Natasha said at my right. "Better chicken than egg. Who cares?" "Obviously you don't," Gabriel said. It grew deathly cold. "I do believe I still smell that brie," Kate said, and we all laughed. Kate gloated her bon mot briefly before nodding for Douglas to go next. Douglas cleared his throat. "This may sound dire, but I would like to toast to the hope of making it through this year. When my sister was a senior, she never really told me what was going on, but she was really stressed and worried and cried a lot. I think that sort of stuff can really test friendships, and so I want to toast to being careful and trying to make it through." He raised his glass, and we all slowly followed. Douglas always was a worrywart, but this seemed darker. Even the clinking of our glasses seemed to be at a lower pitch. For a second, I almost ran to him and held him, but then I didn't. Lily looked like the burden was on her to lighten the tone, but snappy jokes aren't her style. She plans things out. She looked at her plate and then at us. "Here's to rising above petty obstacles." "Must we?" Kate asked. "What should we fight about if not silly things like how to bake the brie? Must we reserve fighting for deep emotional conflicts?" "I'm sorry, my toast was inaccurate." Lily narrowed her eyes. "Here's to letting our favorite superficial things, like baking brie, replace whatever other superficial things, like, say, college applications, may get in our way." With that, everyone drank. Thinking about college applications tends to make us thirsty. "Amen!" cried Gabriel and Natasha in unison, and they looked at each other across the table, tried to scowl, and finally grinned. Flora Habstadt was next and looked uncertain. She had been looking uncertain since we all sat down. Finally, her eyes lit up hopefully, and she raised her glass. "Here's to being pushed to the limit academically, athletically, and socially." The PTA slogan at one of our dinner parties. The trouble with everyone trying not to laugh at once is that you can't look anywhere for fear of meeting someone's eyes. We all stared at different points in space and tableau, like a table full of mannequins. Jennifer Rose Milton, at the opposite head of the table, tried to save the day. "I make the same toast as Flora, only more generalized." Whether she is more kind or more beautiful is completely up for grabs in my book. May all the clichés people try to sell us about this time in our lives come true. I mean, it would be nice to be pushed to the limit, academically, athletically, and socially, wouldn't it? It would be nice to have the greatest time of our lives and to have our eyes shining with promise and all that, wouldn't it? We all nodded dumbly. If we had opened our mouths, we still might have laughed at poor Flora. Natasha was the only one who had the guts to push us to the limit socially by trying to break our pent-up laughter. "In that case," she said, her voice mock-softening, "I toast to world peace." "You know," Flora Habstead said brightly, "I read in the Guinness Book of World Records that world peace is the most frequent toast at official functions." We couldn't hold it. We all laughed loud and long, and luckily Flora Habstead looked confused rather than hurt, so I think she didn't know what we were laughing at. "If it would be all right with our hostess," I said while everyone was still laughing, "I vote to dispense with the rest of the toasts. After world peace, there's little else to toast." Kate looked a little disappointed, but didn't push it. "I suppose. Well, let's eat." Gabriel went to get the plates that he had been keeping warm in the oven. Vi got up to help. Adam, at my left, due to Kate's tactful place cards, turned to me gratefully. I could smell aftershave just faintly. How can I ever thank you for bailing me out of thinking of a clever toast? Sipping without nibbling made me bold. "Another bottle of wine via your fake ID," I said. "Wine's scarce round these underage parts." "Done," he said, "though you'll have to come with me and give out advice. I'll call you." I'll call you. Just like that. One dinner party, and I'm already miles ahead of all those soul-searching aerograms.